Hello, everybody. The journey continues. My name's Becky. I'm an addict, and I've had the good privilege to be a special worker at NA World Services for many years. I want to thank the Washington Northern Idaho region, and especially Franny and all of you who gave your time and energy this weekend to honor something I hold dear, which is the importance of our fellowship's primary service center and our responsibility to ensure that it's here in the future. So from myself and all the staff at NA World Services, thank you for caring. Franny asked me to provide an overview of the fellowship development activities at NA World Services. And she asked me because I usually facilitate a session at the World Service Conference every 2 years that focuses on the workshops and trips that NA World Services facilitates, sometimes by NAWS staff and board, sometimes by neighbors, some great variety of things every 2 years. And we report that to the conference so that they understand where the resources went, what the focus was, and the purpose of those trips. It's a tearjerker, but it's primarily a tearjerker because of the faces and voices and stories of all of those people around the world. And I can't really recreate that here. We also do a public relations session, so that's many hours of presentation about the activity. And so I've tried to figure out some way to give you just a small glimpse into what your primary service center does on your behalf and how important it is. These are definitely not normal times. And in the past 18 months, NA World Services has not done any travel and has no plans to do so in the near future. Those decisions were made for both financial and safety reasons. The World Board has not met face-to-face and currently has no plans to do so, but they meet virtually every month. Over half of the staff employed by NA World Services at our 5 locations around the world were furloughed in March of 2020. Much of that staff had, our average length of employment was over 10 years. We've only been able to bring back a few of those people in the past few months. And what that means is that we're stretched pretty thin. We have several staff for whom life on life's terms is showing up, and we have no cushion of resources to take up the slack. This is a homegrown video made by me, so please don't blame the technology or graphics staff for this effort. My focus is really only on the information, and my skill set does not make the PowerPoint or the video pretty. So what is fellowship development? I think the introduction to our basic text says it much better than I can. And it says, everything that occurs in the course of any service must be motivated by the desire to more successfully carry the message of recovery to the addict who still suffers. It was for this reason that we began this work. We must always remember that as individual members, groups, and service committees, we are not and should never be in competition with each other. We work separately and together to help the newcomer and for our common good. We have learned painfully that internal strife cripples our fellowship. It prevents us from providing the services necessary for growth. Even though that was written a very long time ago, that passage feels as important and relevant today as it's ever been. To continue to remind us of what it takes to fulfill our primary purpose, to carry our message to the addict who still suffers, a vision statement was created for NA World Services and adopted by the World Service Conference in 1996. That statement served as such an effective touchstone for NA World Services that 14 years later, in 2010, it was revised to be a vision statement for all of NA service. Our vision statement captures the components of what it takes to have effective fellowship development. It speaks to our commitment as a fellowship to our primary purpose. It reminds us of the importance of honesty, trust, and goodwill if we're to be effective in our service efforts, and lays out our aspirations of what is possible in the 4 bullet points. Those bullet points say, every addict in the world has the chance to experience our message in his or her own language and culture and find the opportunity for a new way of life. Every member, inspired by the gift of recovery, experiences spiritual growth and fulfillment through service. NA service bodies worldwide work together in a spirit of unity and cooperation to support the groups in carrying our message of recovery. Narcotics Anonymous has universal recognition and respect as a viable program of recovery. Not only is this vision statement our touchstone for service, but it lays out for me what our aspirations and values are as a fellowship. Saying that every addict in the world has the chance to experience our message in his or her own language and culture and find the opportunity for a new way of life is a huge commitment. And the progress that we have made as a fellowship towards that vision is remarkable. And in my experience and opinion only, fairly unique in the history of 12-step fellowships. I was surprised to learn that there are well over 500 fellowships licensed by Alcoholics Anonymous to use an adapted version of the 12 steps. And as far as I'm aware, only NA has kept a common global vision that we are all collectively responsible to ensure that that happens worldwide. Our vision statement is a global commitment that we carry forward in translations, at our World Service Conference, and at NA World Services in countless ways that are fairly unique. Our vision is idealistic and hopeful, and yet we make progress towards it every day. The Journey Continues event is a great reminder of what we can accomplish when we pull together and act in a spirit of unity and cooperation. Franny certainly pushed the purpose of this event and the way that the Washington Northern Idaho region has embraced that purpose and invited service bodies and members from around the world to join in what fellowship development is all about, both connection and responsibility for the fellowship that saved our lives. Only we as members can ensure that our message is available for the addicts still to come, and NA World Services plays an important part in that possibility. I have known since my very early recovery that NA World Services was a lifeline for me and important to the continuation and growth of Narcotics Anonymous. Recovering in a very small NA community in the late 1970s, the office was literally our lifeline. When we had problems as our community began to grow and personalities replaced principles as they so often can, I naively wrote to the trustees and asked rather forcefully that they had to help us find a way through. And surprisingly to me, they sent someone, and their presence mattered to me and to my NA community. We suddenly had connection and experience beyond our local understanding. My experience as a trusted servant and now as a special worker has only deepened my personal beliefs about the importance of our primary service center, grown from the trunk of a car to 5 locations around the world. I hear many of my peers in recovery talk about missing the fellowship as it was. Of course, it felt more intimate then when the majority of us knew each other. We all spoke the same language. I prefer what NA has created in the time that I've been clean, a global fellowship that is much closer to reaching the reality of one of my favorite sentences in We Do Recover. It is available to us all. Our service manual says that the basic purposes of our world services is communication, coordination, information, and guidance. We provide those services so that our groups and members can more successfully carry the message of recovery, and so that our program of recovery can be made more available to addicts everywhere. To be able to do that effectively, it requires an understanding of what's happening in NA communities around the world and effective strategic planning. NA World Services is not the authority or the police. The only rules that we try to apply are the policies and guidelines that we have been given by the World Service Conference and between conferences by the World Board. Some members seem to view NA World Services as some sort of authority, and rebelling against perceived authority is not an uncommon trait among many of us. From a World Service perspective, we see ever-growing need and try to find ways to help, and certainly not to try to exert control or power. Trying to control addicts is definitely second step material. We are in essence a repository of the fellowship's experience over time and through a variety of languages and cultures. Anthony has provided several videos for this event that explain what is NA World Services, and they go into a lot more detail than I can here today. So who do we provide that communication, coordination, information, and guidance to? I think many NA members have experienced exposure to a worldwide fellowship in the pandemic, primarily because of our fellowship's extraordinary response to the pandemic and to starting virtual meetings all over the world. No one knows what the new normal will be and what will become of what was over 76,000 weekly meetings reported to us a month before the shutdown in March of 2020. Our current language map says NA meetings are held in 91 languages. I think this is a little bit optimistic since this list also contains the languages that we produce key tags in. I'm not aware of any meetings held in Welsh or Hawaiian, for example, but they do show our fellowship's commitment to making people feel welcome to NA and honoring the local language and culture. We currently produce key tags in 59 languages, and the most recent edition was Zulu. We publish literature now in 56 of those languages, with Georgian being our newest language to produce. During the last fiscal year, meaning July 2020 to June 2021, we published more than 90 new pieces of translated literature, which it gets added to this graphic and brings our total number of translated pieces to over 1,300. That's almost 2 new pieces a week. We have almost doubled our translation publication rate during the pandemic through a combination of deliberate focus on what members most need and not having any publications to produce. The most heartening part of this graph to me over time, and sometimes the most daunting, is the steep increase year to year. These are boards in our translations department. We currently have almost 100 active translations projects at NA World Services, with 21 of those projects being book-length pieces. Local members do the heavy lifting in almost all translations, with very few exceptions. It takes dedicated members willing to devote countless hours to the work, even when a professional translator is used. We oversee translations to make sure conceptual fidelity to the literature is maintained, and we organize proofing, copyrights, layout, and production. And we coordinate much of that work through contractors. It's a lot of contractors. The numbers are staggering. In contrast, AAGSO publishes literature in 3 languages. For almost a year, we've had a translation staff of 1 and a production staff of 1. And now, because of recent returns, we're up to 1.5 in each department. This is just a graphic of some of our newest translated items. And it doesn't show the most recent work, but it was the most recent picture I could find. It does show how quickly communities responded to having a new IP that speaks to mental health and recovery. NA World Services collects a lot of information about the fellowship in a desire to constantly look at and evaluate how we can help. This is a 12-year meeting trend broken out by geographic zones around the world, not necessarily in what we would think of as a zonal forum. And what it shows is, while some communities have extraordinary growth, that the average growth around the world is 7% a year. The only places that are an exception to that are the US and Canada and Central America. And while I certainly do not know, this is only my opinion. There may be many reasons that contribute to that lack of growth, but I am reminded about a line we read in almost every meeting: as long as the ties that bind us together are stronger than those that would tear us apart, all will be well. And I would say that one of the things we have seen consistently, no matter where it is in the world, is that to have effective fellowship development, you have to have unity. So I tried to think about some of the history with fellowship development from NA World Services that some of you may not know. One of the things I'm most grateful for is some rather ambitious undertaking that we have taken over the years in specific places around the world, usually motivated by an inability for the local community to finish translations, which are usually because of disagreements in terms, and especially about what addiction is, and the different understandings and influences that treatment centers and professionals can have in early NA communities. So, you know, when the Worldwide Workshop System started up, one of the first things we took on was a commitment to Russian-speaking members throughout Eastern Europe and the entire continent of Russia. And this map is from 2004. For those red dots are where we brought people, always at least 2, from each community to come together to try to make some progress in the Russian term for addiction, and really to introduce these people to each other, because most of them did not know each other and were trying to communicate with us. We made a commitment to bring that group together, and we did that in 2004 in St. Petersburg, in 2006 in Lithuania, also in Ukraine, again, another meeting back in Russia, and the final meeting was in Hungary in 2007. And part of that came from an understanding that we play a role in those connections that create fellowship development, and that language and culture is hugely important, and that they would learn and support each other. And that is exactly what happened. By 2007, we knew they didn't need us. They were fine all by themselves. And the most recent snapshot of just the Russian Zonal Forum shows that they have 2,700 meetings and 8 regions just in the Russian continent, spanning 11 time zones. And that's not counting all the other communities that were present that they have also given support to in Moldova and Estonia and Ukraine and other Russian-speaking communities. Because that served to be so effective in Russia, these were very expensive, complicated undertakings to bring that many people together and to fund it. So when we were winding down on the need in Russia, we turned the same attention for very similar reasons to the Middle East. This is the map of the workshop we did in 2005 in Bahrain that brought together Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, Iran, Kuwait, and Lebanon. That meeting led to the creation of the World Service Office in Iran, because we had 2 pallets of key tags stuck in Turkey and no way to get them through the border. And we knew that unless we did something within Iran, that we were never going to be able to meet the needs of that community. At the same time, we also created the Arabic Language Translations Committee with members from all of those communities who were willing to participate. And we now have quite a collection of Arabic literature translated and approved and published because of their efforts. Again, we made a commitment to do that every 2 years. And we did it for many years until they didn't need us anymore. This was the Iranian Convention. When we started this in 2005, Iran had 1,141 meetings. Today, they have 23,800 meetings per week before the pandemic. Was that all due to us? Absolutely not. Did we help? Absolutely. Did NA World Services play a stabilizing role in the development of that fellowship? Absolutely. And during the pandemic, the Arabic language communities who attend different zonal forums, the communities in the Gulf usually attend the Asia Pacific Forum, and Egypt attends the European Delegates meeting, created a support team for Arabic communities for fellowship development activities, which we are pleased and happy to support. Those activities, again, winding down from the Middle East, we could take some of our resources and think about what we were going to do to help. What is the white on the meeting map, which means No Narcotics Anonymous, which was the continent of Africa. The South African region had been in existence for a long time, but in the rest of the continent, NA meetings would start frequently, all in many, many different communities, and they rarely lasted because they were so small and had so little support, they just couldn't sustain. So when the first East African Convention was being planned in 2013 in Tanzania, the delegate from South Africa and a member from Kenya both independently wrote to us and said, wouldn't it be fabulous if we could finally get African members together to talk about fellowship development in Africa? We brought those members together from all of the communities for which we knew there were meetings and members. It was coordinated by those two members who had originally written to us. We provided the funding and support, and it was their decision to create a zonal forum. And their purpose is to support fellowship development projects and activities in the continent and to encourage and maintain effective communication among member regions and to enhance connectivity and promote the shared sense of responsibility to those that we serve. You know, it has been a remarkable experience watching what's happened in Africa and how much difference it makes when they support each other. We sent one of those people to the European Delegates meeting and one to the Asia Pacific Forum so that they could see how other zones conducted themselves. And one of their policies is that if you don't live in Africa full time, if you're an expatriate, they don't want you at the zonal forum. They want a zonal forum that's by Africans, for Africans, and it seems to have served them. They meet monthly and sometimes bi-monthly by having a call. They have kept communities growing and alive in places. Recovery is more possible in Africa today because of the African Zonal Forum than it was before. The shutdown has been very difficult for them. And we've sent a lot of literature to Africa, but there is nothing that replaces the connection of one addict helping another. This is just a picture of the African Zonal Forum meeting. So, you know, that sustained commitment to understanding what's there, to providing the resources and support to allow these things to happen, changes the possibility that recovery will be available to the addict who still suffers in that community. I will say that there's 2 new meetings in Nigeria that need support. They're on the virtual meetings page, and there is a convention in South Africa in October. You know, Africa is one of those places where we provide a lot of that free and subsidized literature, as is the Middle East and other places, Asia. And, you know, we don't tell where that goes for the same reason we don't, it's not our story. And it's never our desire to embarrass someone or to cause controversy. So I will say that the gratitude for those members, that all of us make that possible, is remarkable. You know, if you want to hear some of the fellowship development stories that have happened in the last 18 months during the pandemic, I really encourage you to go to the media page at NA.org. There is a link for fellowship development. If you click that link, one of the things that's there is the video of the Service Day webinar. That video is an audio recording and PowerPoint of the webinar that we held on Service Day to honor fellowship development activities that are happening around the world. We can't post members' faces on the internet, so what we post on our website is the audio version with PowerPoints, and we share the version with faces, with delegates, with the understanding that they will keep it off of the internet. So either go visit it yourself and listen to it, or ask your delegate for a copy. But that webinar and video contains some of this material of what NA World Services does, but really what it contains is a dozen other voices reporting on FD activities that are very widely, and they come from all over the US, as well as Iran, Mexico, Argentina, the Arabic-speaking Middle East, Indonesia, the Brazilian Amazon, Russia, Africa, and Europe. So what have been our other fellowship development activities over the last 18 months? In addition to all those phone calls, emails, inquiries, contact that I talked about, both from members and from incarcerated inmates, we've actually done an amazing amount. And one of the first things we did was launch the virtual meeting page on NA.org to help our fellowship's efforts to share experience, strength, and hope about what was working and not working in moving to a virtual meeting platform virtually overnight. And that I hope most of you have seen. WSC 2020 approved the mental health and recovery IP, and it has been widely translated already and distributed. It is available on our website and obviously for purchase in the web store. You know, if you look at this basic text timeline, you will see a lot of languages over Canada, Swahili, Nepali, the 6th edition Russian, Arabic, Portuguese, and Russian e-publications, electronic literature, and the French 6th edition basic text, all since the pandemic happened. And that's just basic text. That's not all of the books, that's just basic text. We also have been focused on how to help members. And so we launched the audio basic text page for free download or streaming in English, Arabic, Hungarian, Russian, Spanish, Thai, and Hebrew. You know, you can't talk about effective fellowship development without talking about public relations. PR Week was a huge success, and areas and regions around the world and zones were very busy with PR activities. It's my impression that many more communities are more proactive with PR, and I think many professionals were more open to hearing from us. One of the complaints I have gotten from especially medical and government professionals over the years is that Alcoholics Anonymous is proactive and Narcotics Anonymous will respond, but we are rarely proactive. I don't believe that's true anymore. I believe it's true in some places, but I think our members, countless thousands of them all over the world, do a lot to help carry the message to those whose lives come in contact with addicts. I mean, this slide from the membership survey just shows that who carries our message? We do primarily. And right behind that is treatment facilities and counseling agencies. And only we can tell them the truth about who and what NA is, how to find us, and that we're available. The other thing we did in the pandemic was cooperate with researchers for 2 surveys. These are researchers that we have used before and that we trust. If you look at things like the National Institute of Drug and Alcohol page, the NIDA page in the US or other places, what you will see is that most research is on how to cure addiction through pharmaceuticals. Or if they even think about community-based organizations, it's almost always Alcoholics Anonymous. And you know, research can be expensive and cumbersome. It requires clearing questions through medical review boards. And not many people have been interested in Narcotics Anonymous, but we have been fortunate to have relationships that we have cultivated over a long period of time with a couple of really fine ethical researchers. And the first thing they wanted to do was point out to other professionals what NA's response has been to the pandemic and how effective virtual meetings were. And the other, they launched another survey later in the pandemic about what tools seem to work best. And really what they're doing is trying to just repackage information that they certainly already know as friends of Narcotics Anonymous, so that medical professionals and others will get a new attitude about the viability of Narcotics Anonymous. Public relations has continued to have webinars with people who do PR service, both zonal and area and regional people, H&I, inmate step writing. You can find much more about all of this on NA.org webinar. And one of the things that we're all so grateful for is because of committed members in Florida, Ohio, Arizona, and Virginia, we have been able to load inmate tablets, which are provided to inmates in institutions with NA recovery literature, including the audio versions of the basic text, at no cost. And our literature is more available. And this is all new. We don't know what it will mean, but it's absolutely in keeping with our primary purpose. The other thing we do with fellowship development is definitely the conference. This was the room in 2018. The room in 2020 looked much different. And the room in 2022 and 2023 will look yet different again. There are currently 142 voting members at the conference. 123 regions, 6 zones, and 13 members of the World Board. We published recently our first digital annual report. There is a PDF version available, but it was a big step for us to go to a digital version, and it happened because of the pandemic. We're still hard at work on the Spiritual Principle a Day book project, which will be presented this coming at the end of November in English. It will appear in what is now being known as the interim CARCAT for 2022, because the conference is only meeting to make decisions that it has to make and before 2023. We also are working on the Local Service Toolbox project, which was approved by WSC 2020. The 3rd survey is getting ready to be posted soon, and the tools will be updated. And I really encourage you, if you have experience, to check it out and see if it says what it needs to, if something's missing. This really is only an attempt to capture the best experience, strength, and hope from people who are actually doing this so that we can share it with others. I think many people know we launched an Instagram account. We recently had we reached 10,000 followers. And when we did that, we also launched a page for events called NA Global Events. So I encourage you to check out both Instagram and see for yourself. One of the little known resources on the NA.org website is the local resources page. And when you send us your resources of something that you have done that's helped you, we post it and we share it, and people access it all the time. So if you have resources, please share them. If you need resources, please check it out. I'm back to the media page only because so much is there. For those of you who don't follow Instagram, many of our posts are on that social media tab. We have virtual meeting resources, we have videos, we have the fellowship development materials, just more ways to try to share whatever resources we have with all of you. This is just a friendly reminder of some of the shortcuts where you can find things on NA.org. NAWS News is just NAWS News. The annual report is just NA.org/AR. The media page is just media. About Us will give you the most recent NAWS update PowerPoint. We have a page for projects. We have a page for the conference. And of course, we have a page for the FIT. So I want to thank everybody who's lasted through this video and given me their attention. You know, again, from being a member to a trusted servant to a special worker, I have been exposed to different information, but all it's done is reinforce how important it is that we have a service center that people can contact and that is dependable and that they can rely on. You know, we talk to government officials and medical professionals quite frequently. And when we explain what NA is, the first thing I usually hear back is, oh, that's not possible. You don't accept any outside funding. You do it all by volunteers except at the service center. That's not possible. And I go, I know it's not possible, but it happens. And it continues to happen. It continues to grow. It continues to develop because of our amazing members, their passion and their heart. And for all of you who gave of your weekend to be part of this event, thank you. From me, just as a member, thank you, because it matters. And we can create although our history is remarkable, we can create an even better future. So thank you, thank you, thank you.